between Tom Ross and Brian Braun-Duin. Two good friends staying in the same hotel room, and they are in the finals, number 1 and 2 overall seed. Ross will be on the play. He's taking a look at his starting 7, and we are underway here with a Tropical Island and a passing of the turn, though he only has 6 cards here instead of 7. Brian will take a look at his hand. This is a Gataxian Probe. You'll see a Brainstorm becoming immense, a Crop Rotation, along with a Verdant Catacombs and a Tropical Island. So Brian going to write all of these cards down here before moving forward.
This is a pretty soft hand here for Tom. Not much to do, but with a Brainstorm and a Fetch Land and already on 6 cards, can't throw that one away.
Scalding Tarn will be the first land here. Brian will go down to 17. He'll cast a Ponder. Brian already a Grand Prix champion. Won Grand Prix Louisville. Looking to get a second one of these things. Tom, not just yet.
I think that you just showed up that you're not actually from Louisville.
What did I say?
Louisville, which no one pronounces that way.
Jeez, give me a break. My goodness.
I'm just saying the S. The natives will get restless.
Oh, well, I don't care what Shroud thinks. He'll get over it. I'm going to start calling it Louisville now.
Yep. Happens a lot in New Jersey. People call the state capital Trenton, and that's how you can tell they're from out of town.
What's it pronounced? Garbage?
Trenton.
Oh, Trenton. Okay.
I'm going to take garbage shots from the guy from Cleveland. Okay. Okay, man.
It's not personal. Ponder done resolving here. Ross is going to Crop Rotate at the end of turn. Brian knows he doesn't have to, excuse me, Tom knows he doesn't worry about days, so this is kind of a freebie, and Force of Will will take care of that. So I guess it's not totally free.
Yeah, there's always a cost with Crop Rotation. It's never really free.
Ross will draw a Forest for the turn. There's a Trop. And I'll pass the turn back.
Tom just Crop Rotating to hope to get something going. Just wants to get a Nexus in play.
Yeah. Brian will draw. You see he has another Force Will in his hand. Arid Mesa may be the land. Also has a Scalding Tarn too. Looks like he may have a Brainstorm as well. So pretty nice hand here for BBD. There is Tarn. Pass the turn back over to Ross. Ross will draw a Brainstorm. This is a Verdant Catacombs. Will he cast one of these Brainstorms yet? Looks like the answer is no.
No big rush here. I think that the best case scenario is that Tom finds, say, Glistener Elf, and that's just so likely to die that there's no real rush with this Brainstorm. As long as Brian's not doing anything, Tom doesn't have to move. Wait until he has a hand that really needs improvement before firing off one of those Brainstorms.
Time to draw. Arid Mace is the land. This is a Brainstorm. Good to go. A Ponder, a Stoneforge Mystic, and don't have a great look at the throw. It looks like it may have been a Gataxian Probe.
And Gataxian Probe's pretty nice here for Brian because I think he wants to fire off the Stoneforge Mystic this turn, but had to concern himself with days.
Brainstorm done resolving.
So if he gets to scope out the action, he might know if the coast is clear.
Arid Mace will be sacrificed. Brian will go down a little bit lower to 14. Regular damage could be in play this game, I suppose. Stranger things have happened, I will say that.
I think with Tom's hand, it's going to be a struggle for him to kill with damage.
Probably. There's Gataxian Probe. 2 Brainstorms become immense in a forest. Perhaps after this Grand Prix, Tom can up his forest game.
Yeah. Maybe no longer scrounge out of the draft box.
Ah, somebody's working towards a Treasure Cruise. That's good to go too. So Stoneforge, a Lightning Bolt, and a Brainstorm.
Tom didn't even blink. I mean, he had the opportunity to Brainstorm there for Spell Pierce, and
Who cares? Let it go.
trying to save his resources for the fight over removal spells.
Yeah. There's Nickmonth next. That was a draw for the turn. Here's a Brainstorm. Hit 1 is a Crop Rotation. 2 is a Pendlehaven. 3 looks to be a Verdant Catacombs. Put those cards back pretty quick. Pass the turn back. BBD gonna untap. Take a draw here. Looks like it may have been a basic island. One Treasure Cruise already in the books here for Brian, working his way towards the second one. There's a Probe.
Wants to see what Tom kept here with the Brainstorm.
You'll see the new cards there, Pendlehaven and Crop Rotation. Brian already knew about the Brainstorm and Become Immense.
So the big thing for Brian here, if he can stick a Stoneforge Mystic and protect himself from getting killed by some random sequence of cards involving the Nexus and the Become Immense and so forth, he's got a huge edge. There's no rush right now. He can play defense as long as he wants to because Tom isn't moving. But the sooner that he can get to this stage, the sooner he can wrap this game up because Tom's deck is not robust once Umezawa's Jitte starts connecting.
Stoneforge Mystic will search up the Jitte. No interest in a Batter Skull here. Want to get those counters to slow down Tom's Infect creatures. Tom going to sacrifice Verdant Catacombs here on the upkeep.
Lifelink is also not that potent against the Infect strategy.
Indeed. Though if Tom does decide to go manual mode.
Oh, yeah. Like you said, not impossible. Stranger things have happened.
Simply improbable. That's all. Berserk. It's going to be, there's going to be one big turn, one big swell.
Yep.
The question is, when is it going to be?
The fact that Brian fetched a second Volcanic earlier when it might have been convenient to get a Tundra means that there's probably 2 bolts in hand or 2 red spells that matter. Maybe it's a Pyroblast instead.
Here's a Brainstorm. Yeah, speaking of Pyroblast, there that is. See you later.
And there's all these little bits of information like that hanging around this game that players of Tom and Brian's caliber know. Brian knows that Tom knows that Brian's got 2 meaningful red spells in hand.
Yep. There's an attack. 1 Infect. Yeah, it's this interesting game, the jockeying for position. All right, we're going back Brian's way. Brian will draw. Got to ponder. He will cast it. Take a look at a couple. Look like just a couple of lands.
I think there was a Spell Pierce and 2 lands in that ponder.
Pierce actually not bad here.
So, yeah, Brian trying to, again, walk the tightrope of getting enough stuff into play.
That's a big draw. That's a big draw.
Daze is a big draw.
Yeah, this is the card that makes things really, really interesting now. And this is the moment that we've seen so many times from Ross where he runs the permutations through his head of what can happen this turn and if he's supposed to move in or not. How much longer can he wait when you've got an opponent that's just pondering and brainstorming, treasure cruising, sculpting the perfect hand?
Well, the bigger issue is the Umezawa's Jitte that's looming.
I mean, that too.
A curious line of play afforded to Tom also is his ability to say go, block with the Nexus, assuming that Brian's going to attack with the Jitte creature, and then crop rotate away the Nexus. He may be able to burn Brian's turn off doing that.
We're making a move. Pump it.
And now Brian's got to think, he had access to this play last turn and didn't do it. What changed?
What's so interesting about this, he's doing it in the space of 3 mana. so much mana to make this attack into. Brian's got an idea what's in Tom's hand. He knows about Become Immense. Bolt.
Don't slip up, Brian.
Don't slip up, Tom. Rotate. Pierce. Countered.
And now Tom has nothing going on.
Yep.
And Brian is likely to be able to get Jeskai equipped this turn.
You can do it through a daze now, too, with the 5th land. It's a cruise.
Yeah. And yes, even if he dazes here, that keeps Brian off of 1 turn of equipping, but that's not a long-term solution. And once this Jeskai is in play, there's no disenchant effect in this deck. I mean, it's here to stay.
Yep. And he has to daze now.
He can't kill a creature either. I mean, I guess he can berserk the attacker, but...
You laugh, but we've seen it already this weekend.
On the subject of not a long-term solution is berserking a Stoneforge Mystic.
It's a brainstorm off the top of the deck. Here it comes. See if it resolves. Nope. Pyroblast number 2. Ross is going to pass the turn back over to BB2, who will quickly untap and draw. It's a Flooded Strand. This is a young Pyromancer. That is a Gataxian Probe. Trigger, get your elemental, see if the coast is clear. Oh, it's very clear.
Yeah, nothing going on in that hand. No resistance to a Jeskai, no Infector, no risk of finding an Infector, nothing.
Become Immense, Berserk, and a Tropical Island. Brian will write him down. He'll get himself an elemental token. He'll have to pay 2 life, of course, but I'm sure he's okay with that. As perhaps now it's time to suit up the Jeskai. Who's going to wear the legendary artifact? I have a feeling it's going to be Stoneforge Mystic, but we'll see in a moment here. Looks like maybe a slight conversation here. See what's happening.
I think Brian may not remember if he drew a card off the Gataxian Probe or not.
Yeah.
This has happened to me before in the past. When you Gataxian Probe someone and you know that they're basically dead, sometimes you forget to draw the card because you're just so excited to see their hands.
You see the coast is clear, and it's just like, okay, let's go. So, yeah, it looks like I think he did forget. I think Tom's just conceding the game, so it's just like, well, I'm beat, so it doesn't actually matter.
Right.
And this is Fred's belly the file, Brian with a giant smile on his face. Tom's like, well, I'm not gonna sit here and go through this.
Yeah.
Look, I'm dead. I'll pick it up, and we'll move on to a second game. That's what we're gonna do. Brian Braun-Duin gonna win game number 1 here over Tom Ross. Jeskai Stoneblade up a game here over Infect. As we take a look here at the sideboards, you see what Ross does have available. A Necropede, a Spellskite, a Sylvan Library, a Blue Blast, the Force of Will, Spell Pierce, a Submerge, and a Jeskai, which just helped beat him. One with the Bajuka Bog in a Wasteland, 2 Hydroblast, 2 Crows and Grip, and a Nature's Claim.
So I like the Jeskai a lot in this matchup. I think bringing in solutions to Jeskai is really important for Tom too. 1 Nature's Claim and 2 Crows and Grip feels like a lot of disenchant effects, but Jeskai might matter so much that he wants to bring in all of it. I think the Necropede is good in this matchup. It's good against Young Pyromancer. And the copy of Spellskite, pretty solid against Lightning Bolt. So I think he's got a lot of options.
Other side, we see a Grafdigger's Cage, 2 copies of Containment Priest, the Meddling Mage, a card that helped Brian win his semifinal match against Storm. A Vendilion Click, a Council's Judgment, a Supreme Verdict, Electrickery, 2 copies of Flusterstorm, a Hydroblast, a Pyroblast, and a singleton copy of Wear Terror.
I like the Supreme Verdict, the Wear Terror, the 2 copies of Flusterstorm, and the Electrickery.
He's got good options.
Pyroblast as well. Yeah, just everything, every cheap removal spell, every good sweeper. Supreme Verdict is a bit risky because, as we know, Tom can win from no base. He can crop rotate. If Brian sweeps away his whole board and leaves Tom with nothing, Tom can still end of turn crop rotate for an Inkbot Texas, untap, and kill Brian with pump spells. I still think Supreme Verdict is worth it on the balance, but it is not lights out against Tom. Tom can simply kill Brian before he gets to untap if Brian taps out for a Supreme Verdict.
Well. Game number 2 going to be underway here in just a moment. You mentioned, too, that you felt this was a pretty good matchup here for Jeskai Stoneblade. Just has a lot of interaction, and it's all cheap.
Yes, that's the recipe that you need. Cheap interaction, and then a way to close the game out. Because Tom can maneuver and this deck can maneuver. We saw when he played against the blue-red Landstill deck, there was no shortage of removal in the blue-red deck, but it took too long to close the game out, and Tom was able to reassemble, and eventually kill. What makes this matchup so good for Brian is that he can fend off Tom early on in the game and then close the game out with Stoneforge Mystic for Jitte, and Tom can't get back into it. Post-board, it's a little bit different because Tom has access to Nature's Claim and 2 copies of Crowsang Crypt, so he can fight over Umezawa's Jitte. But
he's got some more interaction.
Exactly. But game 1, that mixture of cards, plows, bolts, cheap counters, and Stoneforge Mystic, is about as punishing as it gets for Infect.
And we'll see. Both players going to take a look at each other's deck lists, find a configuration that they like, and then game number 2 will be underway here in just a moment between these two good friends. Jeskai Stoneblade has been a breakout deck over the past 10 days. Rudy Brisca's win in Columbus last week, and a lot of conversation about it leading up to that tournament as it had some nice Magic aligned results. Brisca dominated Columbus. Let's call it what it is. He dominated that tournament.
Didn't lose a game in the elimination rounds, didn't lose a match through the Swiss. I mean, it's about as convincing of a tournament as I've seen in a while.
And now you've got Jeskai Stoneblade here in the finals in the hands of Brian Braun-Duin. He's up a game. He's only got to win one more for his second Grand Prix title. But he's got one hell of an opponent on the other side. Tom Ross, Infect, 2 invitational wins this year, Season 2 and Season 3, as that deck was his weapon of choice in Legacy. He also plays it in Modern. He came up just a little bit short at Grand Prix Richmond earlier this year. And now here he is, #1 overall seed. Has been dominant this weekend, though his back is against the wall right now.
It's a tough matchup, and Brian mentioned as much to one of our colleagues. I think the matchup is good for me, but it's Tom Ross.
Yep. It's the best way to summarize it, isn't it? He's always up to no good. Draw just did not come together that game.
He mulliganed, kept a hand light on action, but with the Brainstorm as a possibility to improve it. And Brian had the Jeskai Stoneblade draw that you want in this matchup. Was able to fend off Tom's action, fight over spells with soft counter spells, able to get Stoneforge Mystic online. It's about as 1-2-3 as it can get for Brian in this matchup.
Always nice to have access to each other's deck list. Know exactly what they're up to. For Brian, you know, he's probably 90% sure what Tom has access to. They're sitting in the same room. Brian's familiar with the deck. Brian's familiar with Tom. They're good friends, but you know, that clarity to see, okay, I don't have to worry about some of the nonsense that you've played before is always pretty nice.
I would, you know, with the deck list public here, I think it helps Brian because Tom probably has a pretty solid idea of what Brian's bringing to the table. Maybe he doesn't know the details exactly, but broad stroke speaking, we'll know the types of cards that are in Brian's deck. But I've seen just too much crazy stuff out of Tom. Seen people getting killed by Become Immense out of nowhere. I've seen Piracy Charm come up.
Yep. Stifles ruined some people.
Stifle, yep.
Tom on the play, he'll take a look first.
A Miser's Submerge. I want to know, I want to see Tom's list.
Well, there's Tropical Island, just a passing of the turn. Both players keep their 7. Brian with an Arid Mesa, he'll simply pass the turn back. Ross will take a draw step. Copy of Inkmoth next, he'll play 1. And there is a Blighted Agent. So 2 Infectors already here for Tom.
And that's important. He's got to weather the storm of removal here. And unlike Jeskai decks we've seen in the past with Stoneforge Mystic, Owen Turnwald's winning deck in Washington, D.C., for example, no copies of Wasteland. So this Nexus is much more important here than it is against the traditional bills of Jeskai Delver.
Arid Mesa will be sacrificed. This may be in response to Blighted Agent. We'll find out very quickly, that's for sure. As these Red Elemental and Pyroblast effects are available to Brian, especially after sideboard. Could also just be something simple like a Lightning Bolt. We'll see in just a moment here. And it is a Bolt going after Blighted Agent. Tom's going to Daze, says, I want to keep this. Daze is going to resolve.
Really important for Brian not to get too fancy. The easiest way I see people lose against Infect is by trying to save their removal spells to play in response to pump spells. Don't get too clever. Just get stuff off the table.
Gataxian Probe going to show a Brainstorm, a Spell Pierce, a Tropical Island, that of course Brian already knew about, a Verdant Catacombs, and another copy of Inkmoth Nexus. So an interesting hand here from Ross. Brian will draw a card.
I like this hand a lot for Tom because it gives him the option of beating down if Brian's not really doing anything. And if the game slows down, he has Brainstorm plus Fetch Land to find some action. It's land heavy, but this is a solid hand.
This is the kind of hand that Brainstorm fixes. Pass the turn back over to Ross. Ross will draw a card. It's a Forest. Step 1, attack with the agent. 1 Infect here for Brian. And Tom will just very simply pass the turn back.
Again, patience, not trying to just animate the Nexus and get in with both.
It's all about picking your spots with this deck. Brian going to play a copy of Brainstorm. Wonder if Tom will fight here with the Spell Pierce.
With a Fetch Land in play, and the fact that Brian's deck is, most of the reactive cards are 1 mana, I think it's really tempting to fight over this, but Tom says no thank you. Go ahead and Brainstorm.
2 cards going back here for BBD very quickly, it seems. And he won't sacrifice the Flooded Strand, so he likes what he sees. There's another Flooded Strand. Is it time to cast a Gataxian Probe? Nope. Just pass it back. Vine to the Vast with the draw. Always a dangerous one.
This is what I mean about don't get too fancy with your removal spells, because this is a way to get trapped for extra points of damage.
In for 1.
When Tom making the motion, I'll pass. Not looking to pump.
Oh. Push you to 2 Infect. Pyroblast. Might I go after the Blighted Agent?
That's a tough spot here for Tom. He can use the Vines, but the Vines is an important piece of this puzzle too. Brian showing a lot of respect for Spell Pierce. I like Brian's approach to this of just trying to trade 1 for 1 as much as possible.
Pyroblast going to get countered. Brian will sacrifice the Flood Train before he draws the other card from the Brainstorm, so he's going to go down to 16. There's a Tundra. Right now it feels like Brian playing the game on his terms.
Exactly. Still no clock in play, and most notably no Stoneforge Mystic, no Umezawa's Jitte, but the pace of the game, his ability to react to what Tom's doing right now feels really good for Brian. He's getting himself to the point of the game where he's able to maximize his resources.
There's a probe yet again. Pierce, Brainstorm, Forest, Inkmoth Nexus. Forest, the unknown card in the equation from the previous Gataxian probe.
Though this probe is nice, but it's not really that informative long term because Tom's going to be shuffling away a lot of these cards in a moment.
Looks like Flusterstorm the draw. One's rather creative. See, Brian does have a Spell Pierce in his hand. There's also a Force Will there and a copy of Electrickery. How greedy do you get with the Electrickery? Here's a Treasure Cruise. Time to reload, perhaps.
Based on what I've seen out of Brian so far, I think that if he has a spot to trade 1 for 1, he'll trade 1 for 1. Especially with Treasure Cruise in the deck.
Meddling Mage, Swords to Plowshares, among the cards that are drawn. He's gassing up pretty good.
No land for him, unfortunately. I'm sure he would have liked to make a land drop this turn. He'll end up discarding to hand size, most likely. Especially because he knows about the Spell Pierce. He's not trying to run any of his spells into there. Missing land number 4 there. Pretty bad for Brian.
He's going to sacrifice a Flooded Strand. Let's see what he wants. Volcanic or Tundra? Tundra.
You know these two have played this matchup before for high stakes, or something very close to it.
Yeah?
Yes.
Must have been some sort of open series event.
Exactly. Brian thought that Humility shut off Inkmoth Nexus.
Oh, no.
It does not. And Tom untapped and killed him. That was that.
Sorry about that whammy.
Lessons learned.
Gotta learn them sometime. Brainstorm. Resolves. Blue Blast, Probe, Vines. Those are the 3 that are added to Ross's grip. We'll see what 2 go back.
And you can see why Tom did not want to spell pierce that Source of Plowshares last turn, even though he could have. That fetch land's too valuable. His hand was pretty bad. He needed to brainstorm and shuffle, and now his hand's gotten dramatically better as a result.
Now he will sacrifice the fetch land. There's a trop.
Again, just a lot of patience on display here from Tom's side of the table. For a deck with a stigma of just push your cards in the middle of the table, he's showing that it's anything but.
Let's take a look at your hand. How do you like it? Brian says, I don't mind. My hand's great. 2 Meddling Mages, Force of Will, 2 Flusterstorms, Electrickery, and a Spell Pierce.
Well, the issue with this hand is there's not a lot in the way of creature removal. There's really only Electrickery right now. The Meddling Mage is not a very effective blocker in this matchup, though it provides other utility. But still a solid hand for Brian.
Cantrip, Ink Moth. Tom might be able to overrun him with Ink Moths. That's how he's going to have to try to do, I think. There's an attack from 1 Infect.
It's just hard for Brian to deploy his cards efficiently right now.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue.
Up to 3. Somebody needs lands.
Again, Brian missing his land drop last turn is all sorts of trouble. Not just because he had to time a Source of Plowshares, maybe at a point where he didn't want to, but he's reaching that dangerous part where if Tom decides to take a fight, Brian may not be able to deploy all of his defenses.
Well, it looks like a Plains was the draw. And that's a pretty big one. A land's a land at this point, it seems.
Brian will take any land at this point.
Meddling Mage. Let's see what this is going to name. Invigorate is the choice, and now Tom has drawn one of his one-ofs. Somebody may be going for a cruise in just a moment. We'll see. There's another Nexus. Fire that up. In for 1. Put you up to 4. This jockeying position is so much fun to watch.
I love it. Just Tom measuring everything so nicely thus far.
And Brian trying to fight this off the best he can as the draw was a brainstorm for the turn.
These turns of Brian spinning his tires, you know, as good as his hand is, I've seen this before. Where players just get bottlenecked with reactive cards they can't deploy on time.
The land last turn was a big draw. The brainstorm was pretty good too. Brian just attacks for 2 and passes the turn back. Blighted Agent the draw here for Ross. Interesting wrinkle in the equation. Again for Brian, his hand right now, he's got a brainstorm over there. Spell Pierce, Force of Will, Electrickery, and then 2 copies of Flusterstorm. Can't forget about the other Meddling Mage too, though he hasn't cast that yet.
It's been a long time since I've seen a rail this deep watching the finals of a Grand Prix.
Yeah. Here's a Blighted Agent.
And at some point, Brian has to say, I just have to counter something. I just have to get cards out of my hand and trade.
He's got 7 right now.
This Blighted Agent is especially annoying because Brian can say to himself, well, maybe he'll get to a spot where I can Electrickery multiple things. But Tom knows about it, so I think that Brian's best served just Force of Willing this and moving on.
He's thinking about it. And he will, removing a Spell Pierce. Five cards left here for Brian. about a chip shot? Yep, up to 5 Infect.
Not wanting to fight the fight inside of combat.
Untap and draw. Young Pyromancer is interesting. Is he willing to put his shields a little lower to get that onto the table? First things first is a Brainstorm. Ross looking at a Spell Pierce. He says that's fine. 3 cards here. Umezawa's Jite looks to be 1. Don't get a great look at the other 2. This game gets a lot harder if that thing's in play.
Yeah, Tom right now without any of his disenchant effects.
Also picked up a copy of Treasure Cruise with the Brainstorm, so we'll see how BBD opts to put the cards back here. One thing I don't think he found was a land.
I think Treasure Cruise is a low priority for Brian at this point.
Me too.
It's about playing to the board. He can cruise somewhere down the line and gas back up, but...
Well, take it back. There's a Scalding Tarn. That's a big one. In comes the Meddling Mage. Ross down to 14. Won't deploy anything. Just going to pass the turn back. Ross will draw. It's the 4th Inkmoth Nexus.
There's this interesting cat and mouse game right now with this Electrickery. Tom not willing to give up anything and anything more than 1 Nexus. And Brian not willing to use the Electrickery until he absolutely has to, or he's getting more out of it than just 1 Nexus.
1 damage star creature you don't control, or we can overload. Just 1. Making a move.
Yeah, Brian says enough.
Tom doing a little count in his head. Flusterstorm's over there. Or at least he thinks so. Brainstorm did resolve after all.
Yeah.
Take a look at Tom's graveyard. 6 cards down there. He's 1 away from Treasure Cruise.
And that is an incentive for Tom not to really pick a fight here, because post-combat he can Treasure Cruise.
Flusterstorm kind of mucks that up, though. There's a land. So interesting.
Doesn't muck it up. He can play for 1. And
Well, the problem here is, I mean, he can play it for 1, and then Cruise can kind of say, okay, well, we've both played some spells, so you'll have to pay a bunch of mana if you want to do this. And then if he pays a bunch of mana, that could tap him out because he already played a land, and then he gets a hit with the Jite.
Well, he may not be aware of the Jite.
This is true. This is true.
Tom may not be playing around that right now.
Yeah.
And if the Treasure Cruise resolves, maybe he finds one of his disenchant effects, and it's not really the end of the world.
Now there's a Flusterstorm. And he's going to pay.
Tom has nothing else to do with his mana.
Sure.
So this is, what else is he going to do?
Brian going to sacrifice the Scalding Tarn.
But he has something else to fight over this. This might be the opening to get Jite online. And if we saw what happened in the first game, it's very hard for Tom to get out of that. Now, he can blow it up. He can rip something to blow up the Jite, which he can't do game 1, but he doesn't have that much time to find it.
So time for the other Flusterstorm. Yep. Both of those are gone now. And Brian can't untap fast enough. He'll draw a card. He's used his resources very well. He'll start with the Treasure Cruise. He's gassing back up.
Exactly. This is a good spot to do it. Now it's 1 mana, and he's worn Tom out of resources.
Wear Tear. I believe another Cruise and a Probe.
You might be able to cruise twice this turn if you cared about it.
There's a Probe. Show you a Vines, a Pierce, and a Blue Elemental Blast.
He now knows the Jite is good.
Young Pyromancer's the draw. Is he willing to put the shields down? Yes, he is.
Well, it's not exactly shields down.
Yeah, well, this is true.
He gets 2 sources of instant speed, -1/-1, so.
They're the 2 counters. You got to believe Ross has Crozen Grip in his deck after sideboard.
I think he's got 2 Crozen Grips and a Nature's Claim to get out of this.
Spellskite is interesting, to say the least.
Though I believe that Brian has drawn his copy of Wear Tear.
He has.
So we don't have to go through the complexity that is Spellskite v. Umezawa's Jitte.
There is the Skite.
I anticipated this card would come in because of Lightning Bolt.
Yep. It's good protection. Nexus coming in. Puts you up to 6. Untap. And draw. Another probe here for Brian. Fire away. Same 3. Spellskite was the draw. Force of Will's the draw here for Brian. That's a biggie.
Yep. Means he can definitely get the Spellskite off the table.
In we go. Wonder if we block here.
Well, I don't think I think blocking is pretty poor because post-combat, Brian can go -1, -1, and there's nothing to be done.
Or just pump once when you do block. Because it's a 2/2, so if he blocks with a spell, he just pumps
Sure.
once and has 3 counters.
Yeah.
So
In either event, I think that he needs to not run a block here.
yeah.
It just allows Brian to kill the Spellskite too efficiently. And that's already the problem that Tom's having, is that Brian's removal is too efficient.
Tom needs a grip. Just wear. Small fight. Tom's got the blue blast in hand.
I feel like he has to try to protect this Spellskite.
Just gonna do it with the vines. Force of Will, remove Treasure Cruise. Lose the fight.
Brian getting rid of a Treasure Cruise here is a big cost. He's banking on this Jitte being good enough, which means if Tom is able to find one of his removal effects for the Jitte, Brian might be in trouble. He'll be low on resources. Tom's got a lot to rebuild with.
Yeah, what's so interesting about this is the fact that he chose to use vines instead of the blue blast, and now here is a Vendilion Click in the draw step. And Tom doesn't even make a response. He could have blue blasted the Meddling Mage, perhaps. But he says, nope, not gonna do that. This is interesting. Oh, excuse me, you can't blue blast the Meddling Mage.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of red blast, my apologies.
Yeah, he's not going to touch any of those cards. The
Yeah.
only thing that Brian cares about at this point is something that can remove the Jitte. And now I think he's in chump block territory.
I think so too.
Because the Meddling Mage is lethal on its own right now.
This is true. 10 points exactly.
And chump blocking is very challenging because...
Oh, it was almost Jitte.
Exactly.
Makes that rather difficult.
The Scourge of 1 toughness decks everywhere.
But Brian can sense it. He's trying to figure out if there's some way that I can get this over with this turn. And for Tom, you're trying to figure out a way to drag this on longer.
Well, at this stage, it's a much lower risk for Brian. I mean, it was the one disenchant he had to avoid last turn. But now, even if he draws something to disenchant this turn, Tom's board's going to get collapsed. And you're seeing it right here. He has to go through this to be able to try to block and avoid lethal. And even if Tom rather rips away to kill the Jitte, well, there's a 2/2 and a 3/1 hanging out, and Tom's got nothing going on.
There, that one goes too. The House of Cards is collapsed. Charge counters back on the Jitte. Ross takes 5. He's down to 5.
As I said before, the collection of cheap interaction plus Umezawa's Jitte, just a challenging recipe for Infect.
It's Young Pyromancer. There's the blue blast. It's Young Pyromancer. No cards in hand. Ross will draw. Gataxian Probe. He'll cast it. He'll draw. Blighted Agent. He'll cast it. He's at 3. Kill it. Untap.
We are about to have our champ.
Brian Braun-Duin, Grand Prix New Jersey champion.
Quite the performance, a second Grand Prix win. A great matchup for him in the finals. Tom, he did what he could, but plows, bolts, blasts, Numazaz Jite, just too much for him to handle in that matchup.
It's a deep breath and exhale, and that smile we've come to know here for Brian Braun-Duin's second Grand Prix win. He's back on the Pro Tour. He's got some pro points headed his way. It's been a big year for him.